There is a city cut in half by a steel fence. On one side, the streets are paved, the shops are full, and the average family earns tens of thousands of dollars a year. A few steps away, on the other side of the fence, the roads crumble, the schools are poorer, and incomes fall by roughly 2/3. Same people, same desert, same food, the same music, often the same last names. The one thing that truly changes at that fence is which government you live under. This is the deepest question in economics. Why are some countries rich while their neighbors stay poor? Let me show you the answer, because it is not the one most people expect. For centuries, people have blamed the obvious things: climate, geography, culture, even race. The idea that hot countries are poor because of the heat, or that some peoples are simply better at building wealth. But nature keeps running an experiment that quietly destroys these easy answers. Again and again, history takes a single people, with one language, one culture, and one landscape, and splits them down the middle with a line on a map. And when it does, the two halves do not stay the same. They fly apart. The clearest example is visible from space. At night, the Korean peninsula tells the whole story in a single photograph. The South is a blaze of light, one of the richest and most advanced economies on Earth. The North is almost totally dark, a black hole sitting between two glowing neighbors. In the 1950s, these two Koreas were equally poor, one people divided only by where a war happened to stop. Today, a South Korean earns more than 20 times what a North Korean does. Same history, same mountains, same language. One line on a map and two completely different worlds. So if it is not the land, and it is not the people, what is it? The answer is the thing that changed at the border in every one of these cases: the rules. Economists call them institutions. Not buildings, but the invisible rules of the game that decide how a society works. Who is allowed to own property? Whether contracts are enforced. Whether power is checked or absolute. Whether a person who works hard and invents something gets to keep the reward, or watches it taken by whoever is strongest. Institutions are the rules. And the rules, far more than the map, decide who gets rich. These rules come in two broad kinds. The first, economists call inclusive. In an inclusive society, property is secure, the law applies to everyone, and power is spread widely enough that ordinary people can start a business, get an education, and keep what they earn. That safety creates a simple but powerful incentive. It is worth building for the future because the future is yours. The second kind is extractive. Here, the whole system is designed to funnel wealth and power from the many to a small elite at the top. A few grow fabulously rich. Everyone else is squeezed. And no one at the bottom has any reason to invest, invent, or take a risk, because the reward will simply be taken away. Think about what those two worlds do to a single ambitious person. Under inclusive rules, if you have an idea, you can borrow money, hire people, and build something, knowing the law will protect what you create. Millions of people making that same bet at once is what an economy actually is. Under extractive rules, that person learns a very different lesson. Keep your head down, hide what you have, and never look wealthy enough to be worth robbing, whether by a neighbor or by the state itself. One set of rules unlocks human effort. The other buries it. Multiply that across a whole population, across generations, and you get the gap you can see from space. Where do these rules come from? A large part of the answer is history, and one of the most powerful clues comes from the age of European empire. When Europeans colonized the world, they did not build the same system everywhere. In a few places, with mild climates and room to settle, they recreated societies with property rights and limits on power. But in places where they found dense populations or vast riches to extract, gold, silver, sugar, and later human beings themselves, they built brutal machines of extraction, designed to pull wealth out and ship it home. The rules they installed were not chosen for the good of the people who lived there. They were chosen for the convenience of the conquerors. Here is the strange and revealing part. Those old rules did not vanish when the empires left. They hardened and were inherited by whoever seized power next. So the places that were richest and most sophisticated 500 years ago, the great civilizations of the Aztecs, the Incas, and Mughal India, are often the ones that ended up relatively poor, precisely because they were the places worth building an extractive machine around. Meanwhile, some sparse and overlooked colonies grew into the wealthiest nations on Earth. Economists call this the reversal of fortune. It is very hard to explain with geography or climate. It is much easier to explain with institutions. This is why poverty is so stubborn. Extractive rules create a vicious circle. The elite who benefit use their wealth to hold power, and use their power to protect their wealth. Real reform threatens the people at the top, so they block it. Inclusive societies tend to spin the opposite way, in a virtuous circle. Power is spread out, so no single group can capture the whole system, and the rules that made the country rich are defended by the many who benefit from them. Once a country falls into one of these loops, it tends to stay there. The rich stay rich and the poor stay poor, not by accident but by design. None of this means geography is meaningless. Being landlocked, or riddled with disease, or far from every market, makes the climb harder. But geography is usually the opening hand, not the final score. The proof is that neighbors sharing the same land can end up worlds apart. Consider Botswana, in southern Africa. Landlocked, dry, and one of the poorest places on Earth when it gained independence in the 1960s. But it built relatively inclusive institutions, managed its diamond wealth for the whole nation, and became one of the great success stories of the developing world. Its neighbors, with similar land, did not. The soil did not decide it. The rules did. That last point exposes one of the great paradoxes of development, the resource curse. You would expect a country sitting on oil or diamonds to be blessed. Yet many of the most resource-rich nations on Earth are poor, violent, and corrupt. The reason is institutions again. Where the rules are extractive, a mountain of oil is not a prize to be shared. It is a prize to be seized, and controlling it becomes the only game worth playing. The wealth funds the army and the elite, entrenches the people at the top, and rots everything else. The very same diamonds that helped build Botswana have, just across the border, funded warlords and fueled civil wars. The rock is identical. The rules are not. Two objections always come up. The first is culture, the belief that some peoples are simply more suited to prosperity. But the two Koreas, one people split in half, quietly demolish that idea. The second objection is harder: China. For decades, China has grown at breathtaking speed while keeping tight one-party political control, which looks like extraction winning. But look closer. China grew by making its economy far more inclusive, giving hundreds of millions of people the right to own, trade, and profit, even as its politics stayed closed. The genuinely open question is whether that growth can continue when the economy is free, but power is not. History suggests that tension eventually has to break, one way or the other. So are countries simply trapped by their history forever? Not quite. Rules can change, usually at rare and turbulent moments that economists call critical junctures. A war, a revolution, a collapse, a new technology, an event large enough to crack the old order and briefly make a different future possible. At those moments, small differences in what a society chooses can send two similar countries down completely opposite roads for centuries afterward. That is the sliver of hope in an otherwise hard story. Nothing is permanent, but the window does not open often, and when it does not stay open for long. This reframes almost everything about global poverty. It explains why simply sending money rarely fixes a poor country. If the underlying rules are extractive, aid is often just more wealth for the elite to capture, sometimes making the problem worse. It explains why you cannot transplant prosperity by copying another country's factories or its laws on paper. And it explains why the hardest and most important work in development is also the least glamorous. Building courts that are fair, governments that are checked, and rules that protect the ordinary person. You cannot pour prosperity into a broken system. You have to fix the system. This is not some fringe theory. In 2024, the Nobel Prize in Economics went to 3 researchers, Darren Acemoglu, Simon Johnson, and James Robinson, for exactly this work, showing with hard historical evidence that the institutions a society builds are the deepest reason it grows rich or stays poor. It is one of the most important ideas in modern social science, and once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it. The wealth of nations is not written in the soil, or the climate, or the blood of a people. It is written in their rules. So the next time you see a border where one side thrives and the other struggles, do not look first at the land. Look at the rules that run each side, at who holds power, who is protected, and who is preyed upon. That invisible architecture, more than any mountain range or ocean, is what divides the rich world from the poor one. Wealth is not a place. It is a set of rules, and rules are built by people, which means they can be broken and rebuilt. Next time, we will follow the fragile cables lying on the ocean floor that carry almost the entire internet between continents. If this is how you like to understand the world, then subscribe, and I will see you there.